The Winnebago County Board approves its $73.5 million fiscal year 2025 budget Thursday evening, but one organization isn't pleased with how much the board allocated for it. The Veterans Assistance Commission proposed a $1.6 million, and the board allocated $1.1 million. Now the organization gets the state's attorney's office involved. The VAC claims the county board has no authority to modify or reject its proposal, but the state's attorney sent a letter to the commission stating the board isn't required to simply rubber stamp whatever is proposed. Winnebago County Board member Paul Arena says the budget the board approved Thursday has a more than $2 million operational deficit because there are more needs than they have income.
We have 3 veterans currently serving on the board. Veterans issues have always been at the forefront of what we do. The problem here is Mr. Pereira is just not being a team player. He does not want to help us move into the right direction. It's all or nothing right now.
Arena adds the county board agreed to spend some of their savings to meet needs, and if they spend more, they won't have any savings. WIFR reached out to the commission superintendent for further comment, but they declined.